We use Martin Gerard. To be honest, the main reason that we went to them in the first place is because they were the agency who were marketing the property when we bought it. We were very impressed generally by the agency at the time when we bought the property, and they helped, even though there was a bit of a tricky situation with the chain, somewhere lower down in the chain. Some problem occurred, and that had to be dealt with. And I think actually Martin Gerard, even though they were not involved in that transaction directly, really helped to push things along. So yeah, when we tried to sell the property, it was sort of natural to go to them. Really, we did have a couple of other agencies value the property, and just to double check what the valuation was, but I think really, as though we already knew Martin Gerard at that point. We were very happy with them from when we purchased the property, and the valuation that they gave us seemed pretty spot on with what we were expecting, and with what other agents were offering or suggesting. And again, obviously the terms in terms of their fee were reasonable. I think we appreciated the fact that they were very local and that they were based right on the main street there in Crouch End. So we felt that they knew the market very well. So yeah, I think all of those factors ultimately led us to pick them. The communication with Tram was always very good. Actually, he was very good at explaining things, and it was particularly tricky because we were actually in New Zealand throughout the process, so dealing with a pretty significant time difference. So there weren't that many times when we were able to speak to him, but nonetheless, he was really accommodating in terms of timings. He understood the time difference. He was helpful in terms of using WhatsApp to call, because we couldn't really easily call on a normal phone line. And he was always very helpful with his communication. To be honest, we often found, that the lawyers and other people involved in the process were not giving us quite such clear answers, and it was often up to Trehan to speak to them and help us understand a little bit what was going on, which he always did very effectively. Yes, in terms of the local knowledge, we always felt that they had a really good view on the local property market, certainly and of the amenities in the area. They're obviously based. Martin Gerard is obviously based right in the centre of Crouch End, and certainly in terms of their valuation, we always felt that they were pretty spot on. We have had other agents in the past who have tended to come in with very high valuations in the hope, I guess, of attracting the business. And I think that Martin Gerard and Trehan were always very fair. He did warn us a couple of times that he thought it might be a struggle to get the highest valuation that we were hoping for, or the highest price that we were hoping for. But in the end, we did get an offer that then proceeded to the next steps. So the valuation was pretty accurate. So that suggested that they had a really good understanding of the local market. So in terms of the value for money, I think that Martin Gerard gave us a very fair deal. I think there are certainly agencies that charge a lower percentage out there, and I have used some like online agencies in previous property transactions, and I have to say I do think that in the case of this property, we definitely saw the value of having Martin Gerard on board, in terms of them going the extra mile to work with our solicitors, the vendors' solicitors, and even other parts of the property transaction chain when necessary, which I think was a little bit almost above and beyond the normal expectation. But I always felt that they were willing to do that, and that Trehan in particular was very effective and very willing to just pick up the phone and go and call whoever he needed to get something resolved. So we were always very happy with that. And of course, the fee is only payable when the vendor actually finally signs. So in our particular case, we were a little cognizant of the fact that the agency was putting a lot of work in and not getting any money out of us, but that was never an issue. And so we were really glad we got there in the end. Towards the end of our transaction, the buyers decided they wanted to reduce their price that they were willing to pay at the very last minute. And we were obviously pretty unhappy with this, and considered rejecting it outright. And in speaking to Treon, his initial response was that we should just outright reject it, and even tell them, tell the buyers that we would just withdraw if necessary. And I was very impressed by that, because obviously that is not at all in Martin Jared's interest or Treon's interest, to sort of throw the sale away like that. But I think he was very fairly advising what he believed to be the best course of action. And in the end, we did manage to work out an agreement with the buyers, and so it did proceed. But I thought that was a very telling moment, certainly in terms of trusting Treon and the agency. That was a big issue for us because we were based in New Zealand, and so we were not. We were asleep for most of the British day, and so a lot of the time we had to really just trust Treon to push things forward in the way that he felt best, and particularly when it came to negotiations with the buyers over the initial price, and then later when they wanted to reduce the price. There were some tough conversations to be had there, and several times we called up Treon or sent him an email with our proposed response almost verbatim, and asked for his opinion, and he was always very helpful with his opinions on that. And in some cases, in fact, he said, look, I think it'll be better if I just call them and talk to them in person rather than you sending an email. And so I think over the course of that process, he very much earned our trust by demonstrating that he was very effective at getting the right result. In terms of the marketing and photos, I think Martin Jared again did a very good job there. It was a tricky situation because our apartment was let at the time, so we had tenants in, and so coordinating with them was a little bit tricky, and obviously persuading them to sort of get it ready for the viewings and for the photos wasn't necessarily something that Martin Jared had any particular way to achieve, other than asking nicely, which they did. And so that was very impressive. It was also, we ended up with a mixture of old and new photos, I think, and so again, then they had to try and work out the best way to present the property. I think in the end they did mostly take new photos, and the result was very good. We got offers on the property before it even went onto the sort of Rightmove portals, which again was one of Treon's suggestions, that we market the property initially just through the Martin Jared portal, and to try and keep it sort of a little more exclusive, and hopefully let him contact his database of potentially interested people, and in fact that worked quite effectively. I think in terms of how they dealt with us, in terms of a personal relationship, that was definitely very evident with Martin Jared. Treon always, in particular, was always very good at building a good relationship with us, and we felt we had a very good personal relationship with him, and he was very accommodating of the large time difference, as I mentioned it, in New Zealand, and the fact that we were never able to be there. He went, I would say, above and beyond in terms of visiting the property, dealing with our tenants, collecting keys, and going and letting other people into the property, other inspectors and other people who we needed to go and visit the property during the process, because we weren't able to be there. So that really was an extra service, I think, that was just above and beyond. And I was always very impressed as well when Treon was out. We would usually deal with James, and he would always know who we were immediately, just from picking up the phone and introducing ourselves, which I was always quite impressed in, because I assume they have quite a lot of clients. So yes, I think that was definitely evident that there is a slightly more personal touch at Martin Jared than at other firms I've worked with in the past. Martin Jared certainly went above and beyond in terms of helping us deal with the property that was also let out, and having to deal with our tenants. I think Trent created a couple of WhatsApp groups that were including us and our tenants, and then another one that was just with us, in order to keep us all informed. It was quite a tricky job, I think, to arrange everything, with so many parties involved. So that was a really positive thing, where I would say he went above and beyond. I was very happy to give this video testimonial for Trent, really, because I think he's done a fantastic job for us. We were so happy with all the effort that he's put in over the period of selling the property. So I'm living in New Zealand now, so it's about 10:40 p.m. in the evening. So it's a little bit of an inconvenient time, but I was very happy to do that, to offer some positive words about Trent, because I really would like to stress what a great job we think, my wife and I think, he did. And so I'm happy to do that. I would absolutely recommend Martin Jared to friends and family, and anyone in Crouch End or the local area who's looking to buy or sell a property. I think they really gave us a great service, and I found that we had a really great relationship with them, really great communication. They really did everything they could to push our sale through. I would say they did more than we expected, even, and more than other agents would do. So in general, I had only positive things to say about them.